Have you ever danced to a song without realizing the artist never expected anyone to take it seriously? Some of the biggest R&B, soul, and funk classics in history were born from inside jokes, last-minute studio experiments, rejected ideas, and songs the artists themselves thought were too silly to matter. Yet somehow, those throwaway records went on to sell millions of copies and become part of music history. Tonight on R&B ZOOM, we're uncovering the unbelievable true stories behind 15 legendary songs that were never supposed to become classics. You'll discover the songwriter who wrote a hit in just minutes, the superstar who recorded a song only to fill album space, the band that laughed their way through the recording session, and the record executives who completely misjudged what audiences actually wanted. Number 15, Mr. Big Stuff, Gene Knight, 1971. Nobody inside the studio believed they were creating one of the defining songs of Southern soul. In fact, the recording almost disappeared forever because it wasn't even intended to become Gene Knight's breakthrough single. It was simply another session inside producer Wardell Quezergay's New Orleans studio, a place where dozens of artists came and went every month hoping for a little radio attention.
Who do you think you are?
The groove came together almost effortlessly. Gene Knight delivered the lyrics with playful confidence, teasing an arrogant man who thought far too highly of himself. The song's sarcastic attitude made everyone in the room laugh, but nobody considered it groundbreaking. The producers believed another recording from the same session had much stronger commercial potential, so Mr. Big Stuff was pushed into the background. Then something unexpected happened. Local radio stations started spinning the record after DJs discovered its infectious groove. Listener requests exploded almost overnight. Stax Records quickly realized they had overlooked something special and rushed the single into national promotion. Within weeks, Mr. Big Stuff climbed all the way to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, while topping the R&B chart, eventually selling more than 2 million copies and earning a Grammy nomination. Today, its playful lyrics and unforgettable bass line have been featured in countless films, television shows, and commercials. What began as a fun, almost overlooked recording became one of the signature sounds of 1970s R&B. Sometimes the songs nobody expects become the ones audiences refuse to forget. Number 14, Love Rollercoaster, Ohio Players, 1975. Before the rumors, before the urban legends, and before millions of people debated what they thought they heard, Love Rollercoaster was simply another funky recording session for one of the hottest bands in America. The Ohio Players were already known for pushing musical boundaries, mixing gritty funk with playful lyrics and irresistible grooves. But nobody inside Mercury Records imagined this record would become one of the most talked about songs in music history. The idea itself wasn't meant to be mysterious. Guitarist Leroy Sugarfoot Bonner and the band wanted to compare the emotional highs and lows of romance to riding a roller coaster. It was a fun metaphor, full of energy rather than deep philosophy. The musicians built a groove that felt like a carnival ride, complete with explosive horns, sharp guitar riffs, and one of the tightest rhythm sections in funk. The recording session moved quickly because the band was known for rehearsing extensively before entering the studio, making the process feel almost effortless. Then came the moment that changed everything. Near the middle of the song, listeners noticed what sounded like a terrifying scream buried inside the mix. Almost immediately, outrageous rumors spread across America. Some claimed a model posing for the album cover had been murdered inside the recording studio while the tape was rolling. Others insisted the scream had been accidentally left in the final recording. The story became one of the biggest myths in music history, repeated for decades on radio shows, school playgrounds, and eventually across the internet. But every credible investigation, and members of the Ohio Players themselves, has consistently rejected the murder story. The band explained the sound came from keyboardist Billy Beck, who improvised the scream during the session to add excitement to the track. Ironically, the false rumor only made the song even bigger. Curiosity drove more people to buy the record just to hear the mysterious scream for themselves. Love Rollercoaster climbed to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and #1 on the R&B chart, becoming the Ohio Players' biggest crossover success. More than 2 decades later, the song found an entirely new audience when the Red Hot Chili Peppers recorded it for the Beavis and Butthead Do America soundtrack. What started as a playful love song and later became surrounded by one of music's greatest myths proved that sometimes the story listeners invent can become almost as famous as the music itself. And even today, millions still replay that moment, wondering what they really heard. Number 13. Give Up the Funk, Tear the Roof Off the Sucker, Parliament, 1975.
Get up off your ass now. It's that time now.
If someone had walked into a recording studio in 1975 and heard a room full of musicians shouting, "We want the funk, give up the funk," they probably would have thought they were listening to a joke. Even members of Parliament wondered whether audiences would take the record seriously. There were hardly any traditional verses, almost no complicated storytelling, and the chorus sounded more like thousands of fans chanting at a football game than a polished soul record. George Clinton wasn't trying to write a sophisticated ballad. He simply wanted people to have fun. The song grew out of Parliament's legendary live performances. Clinton noticed that crowds became most excited when the band stopped playing intricate arrangements and encouraged everyone to sing along. Instead of fighting that energy, he decided to build an entire song around it. The recording session became more like a party than a professional studio date, with musicians yelling, laughing, and improvising together. Many industry executives thought the record was too repetitive and far too strange for mainstream radio. Some believed it sounded unfinished because the chant dominated almost the entire song.
Y'all got to get ready.
They couldn't have been more wrong. Once DJs started spinning the record in clubs, dance floors erupted. The chant became impossible to ignore, and audiences immediately joined in after hearing it just once. Give Up the Funk climbed into the Billboard Hot 100 Top 5, reached the top 5 on the R&B chart, and became Parliament's signature hit. The record eventually sold over 1 million copies and earned an R and Gold certification. More importantly, it transformed Parliament Funkadelic into one of the most influential acts in American music, helping define the sound of funk for generations. Today, that infectious chant has been sampled by dozens of hip-hop and R&B artists, blasted through sports arenas, and featured in films, television shows, and commercials around the world. What started as a playful audience participation gimmick became one of the most recognizable hooks in music history. George Clinton proved that sometimes the simplest idea, the one everyone laughs at first, is the one people remember forever. More than 50 years later, audiences still shout those words together without missing a beat, proving that a song built around pure fun can outlast even the most carefully crafted masterpieces. Number 12, Shout, The Isley Brothers, 1959. Some of the greatest songs in music history begin with careful planning. Shout was not one of them. It wasn't written over months. It wasn't polished by a team of professional songwriters. And it certainly wasn't expected to become one of the most recognizable party songs ever recorded. In fact, it was born almost entirely from improvisation. The Isley Brothers were feeding off the energy of gospel music, live audiences, and pure excitement, creating something that sounded more like a church revival than a conventional R&B record. Ronald, Rudolph, and O'Kelly Isley had spent years performing gospel before crossing into rhythm and blues. During concerts, they noticed audiences responded most when the band abandoned the script. Ronald would begin shouting spontaneous phrases, the crowd would answer back, and suddenly, the performance became an unforgettable experience. Rather than fight that chaos, the brothers decided to capture it inside a recording studio. There were no complicated lyrics to memorize and no elaborate storyline. The goal was simple: make listeners feel like they were standing in the middle of a live celebration. When RCA executives first heard the recording, many weren't convinced. At nearly 4.5 minutes long, it was considered far too lengthy for radio in 1959. The structure broke almost every commercial rule of the era. Instead of building toward a traditional chorus, the song relied on repeated commands, hand claps, and explosive call-and-response vocals. Some industry insiders questioned whether anyone would buy a record that sounded so spontaneous and almost completely uncontrolled. But once DJs began playing it, audiences reacted exactly the way the Isley Brothers had hoped. They didn't just listen, they participated. Shout became the group's first major national hit, reaching the top 50 on the Billboard Hot 100, while selling more than 1 million copies over time. Yet its true legacy only grew with the decades. The song became a permanent fixture at weddings, sporting events, school dances, and celebrations across the world. Its popularity exploded again after its unforgettable appearance in the 1978 film Animal House, introducing it to an entirely new generation. Today, more than 60 years after its release, Shout remains one of the most licensed and frequently performed songs in American music. What began as an improvised stage routine evolved into a global anthem, proving that sometimes the most unforgettable records are the ones that sound like nobody planned them at all. Number 11, Word Up, Cameo, 1986. By 1986, Cameo had already spent more than a decade building a reputation as one of funk's hardest-working bands. They were known for explosive horn sections, crowded arrangements, and energetic live shows. But behind the scenes, things weren't nearly as glamorous. The group was dealing with financial pressure, shrinking record sales, and an industry that believed traditional funk was losing ground to synth pop and electronic dance music. Instead of trying to outdo everyone else, bandleader Larry Blackmon decided to strip everything down, and what happened next surprised everyone. The idea behind Word Up sounded almost too simple. Rather than filling the track with layers of instruments, Blackmon built the song around a drum machine, a thick synthesizer bass line, and conversational lyrics borrowed from the street slang people were using every day. Even the phrase "word up" was considered too casual by some music executives who questioned whether listeners outside urban communities would understand it. Several people inside the industry felt the record sounded unfinished, almost like a demo compared to the polished R&B productions dominating radio. When Cameo entered the studio, the atmosphere was unusually relaxed. The musicians weren't chasing perfection, they were chasing a feeling. Larry Blackmon even delivered many of his vocals with exaggerated confidence, treating the performance almost like a playful conversation instead of a traditional soul recording. The famous Red Codpiece, which later became inseparable from the song's image, only reinforced the idea that Cameo wasn't taking themselves too seriously. But beneath the humor was an incredibly tight groove that proved impossible to ignore. The gamble paid off beyond anyone's expectations. Word Up climbed to number 1 on the Billboard R&B chart, reached the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, and became Cameo's biggest international hit, reaching audiences across Europe, Australia, and beyond. The song earned a Grammy nomination and transformed the group into global stars almost overnight. Decades later, artists from Mel B to Korn recorded successful cover versions, while the original continues to appear in films, television series, commercials, and sporting events. A song many believed was too minimal, too strange, and too dependent on slang ended up becoming one of the defining funk anthems of the 1980s. Sometimes the biggest risk isn't making music more complicated, It's having the confidence to keep it simple. Number 10, Boogie Oogie Oogie, A Taste of Honey, 1978. Sometimes a song changes music history simply because a band refuses to throw it away. That was almost the fate of Boogie Oogie Oogie. Before it became one of disco's defining records, it was little more than a fun groove that bassist Janice Marie Johnson had written while experimenting with a bass line. The members of A Taste of Honey enjoyed playing it during rehearsals, but nobody, including the band, believed it would become their breakthrough hit. Their record label was far more interested in promoting material that sounded safer and more conventional. Janice Marie Johnson insisted the bass should lead the song instead of sitting quietly in the background, something that wasn't common for mainstream R&B at the time. The opening bass riff became the heartbeat of the entire record, while Hazel Payne's sharp guitar work and the band's effortless chemistry gave it an energy that couldn't be manufactured. Even after hearing the finished recording, several executives questioned whether a song with such repetitive lyrics and an extended groove could survive on commercial radio. It sounded more like something made for dance clubs than for the Billboard charts.
Listen to the music and let your body flow.
As soon as DJs started spinning the record, those concerns disappeared almost overnight. Dance floors erupted across America, and radio stations were flooded with listener requests. Boogie Oogie Oogie, shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, topped the Hot Soul Singles chart, and stayed at the top for weeks during the summer of 1978. The song eventually sold more than 2 million copies and earned A Taste of Honey the Grammy Award for Best New Artist, making them the first black female band to receive that honor. What many had dismissed as a carefree dance jam suddenly became one of the biggest records of the disco era.
On the floor, 'cause we're gonna boogie oogie.
More than 4 decades later, the song remains a staple of classic R&B, funk, and disco playlists around the world. Its unmistakable bass line has been sampled, referenced, and celebrated by generations of musicians, while its music video and television performances continue to attract millions of viewers online. Looking back, it's remarkable to think that one of the greatest dance records ever made was nearly overlooked because it sounded too simple. A Taste of Honey trusted the groove, trusted the audience, and in doing so created a timeless anthem that still fills dance floors today. Number 9, Square Biz, Tina Marie, 1981. When Tina Marie walked into the studio to record Square Biz, she wasn't trying to write the next crossover smash. She was simply having fun. Known for her powerhouse vocals and fearless musicianship, Tina wanted a record that reflected her personality: playful, funky, confident, and completely unpredictable. Instead of following the polished R&B formula that Motown expected, she mixed slap bass, funk grooves, spoken word storytelling, and even a little rap, years before rap became a staple of mainstream R&B. To some executives, it sounded more like a jam session than a commercial single. The opening spoken introduction immediately caught people's attention. Tina casually introduced herself before launching into one of the tightest funk grooves of the decade. Some people inside the industry questioned whether audiences would understand the humor or appreciate such an unconventional arrangement. The song shifted between singing and rhythmic talking so naturally that it almost sounded like Tina was making it up as she went along. Rather than chasing perfection, she leaned into spontaneity, letting her personality become the centerpiece of the record. Radio programmers quickly discovered that listeners couldn't get enough of it. What some considered quirky became the song's greatest strength. Square Biz climbed into the top 5 of Billboard's R&B chart, becoming one of Tina Marie's signature recordings and proving she could stand alongside the biggest names in soul and funk. The record also showcased her remarkable musicianship, as Tina played multiple instruments and took an active role in producing her own music, something still uncommon for female artists at the time. Its unforgettable bass line, driven by legendary bassist Louis Johnson, became one of the defining grooves of early 1980s R&B. Today, Square Biz is recognized as one of the most influential funk records ever made. Its infectious groove has been sampled by countless hip-hop producers, while Tina Marie's effortless blend of singing and rhythmic spoken delivery helped bridge the gap between classic funk and the emerging sounds of hip-hop. Official music videos, live television performances, and concert footage remain widely available online, introducing new generations to her incredible talent. What began as a playful studio experiment became one of the greatest funk anthems of its era, reminding us that sometimes the most authentic records are the ones where the artist simply enjoys the moment. Number 8. Atomic Dog, George Clinton, 1982. By the early 1980s, many people in the music business believed George Clinton's golden era was over. Parliament and Funkadelic had revolutionized funk throughout the previous decade, but changing musical trends, financial problems, and industry politics had begun taking their toll. Clinton knew he needed something completely different for his first major solo project. Instead of chasing sophisticated songwriting or polished radio formulas, he leaned into something almost nobody could explain. A song built around barking dogs, outrageous catchphrases, and a groove so hypnotic it sounded like it had arrived from another planet.
Chase the cat! Oh, the dog and me!
The recording sessions reflected Clinton's unpredictable creative process. Musicians wandered in and out of the studio, while ideas were thrown around almost like a comedy sketch. Someone started barking. Someone else answered with another bark. Clinton laughed and encouraged everyone to keep going. Before long, the strange vocal exchanges became the centerpiece of the record. The famous chant, "Bow wow wow, yippee-yo, yippee-yeah," wasn't designed to impress critics. It was designed to make people smile, loosen up, and dance. Even members of the band admitted they weren't entirely sure what they were creating, but they knew it felt different. When executives first heard the finished track, reactions were mixed. Some questioned whether radio stations would ever play a record that sounded so unconventional. There were hardly any traditional verses, no emotional love story, and certainly no polished pop structure. Instead, listeners were greeted with synthesizers, electronic drum machines, playful barking, and Clinton's unmistakable sense of humor. But club DJs immediately recognized something the executives had missed. The groove was irresistible. As soon as Atomic Dog hit dance floors, audiences responded exactly as Clinton had hoped. The song climbed to #1 on Billboard's R&B chart, becoming George Clinton's only solo #1 R&B hit, and introducing P-Funk to an entirely new generation. The real surprise came years later. Hip-hop producers discovered that Atomic Dog contained one of the greatest grooves ever recorded. Artists across the West Coast, including Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, and dozens of others, sampled or referenced the record, helping define the sound of G-Funk throughout the 1990s. Today, Atomic Dog is considered one of the most sampled songs in music history, while its official music video, television appearances, and live performances continue attracting millions of viewers online. What began as a playful studio experiment filled with barking jokes became one of the most influential records ever made, proving once again that sometimes the songs nobody can explain become the songs nobody can forget. Number 7. Outstanding, The Gap Band, 1982. When the Gap Band recorded Outstanding, they weren't trying to create the biggest song of their career. In fact, the record wasn't even released as the lead single from their album, Gap Band 4. Charlie Wilson, Ronnie Wilson, and Robert Wilson had already built a reputation for delivering explosive funk hits like Burn Rubber on Me and You Dropped a Bomb on Me. Those records were loud, energetic, and built for packed dance floors. But Outstanding was different. It slowed everything down, replacing explosive funk with smooth romance, elegant keyboards, and one of the most unforgettable bass lines ever recorded. To some people inside the industry, It sounded too laid back to compete on radio. The recording sessions reflected that relaxed atmosphere. Instead of filling every second with horns and heavy percussion, producer Lonnie Simmons encouraged the band to let the groove breathe. Charlie Wilson delivered his vocals with remarkable restraint, choosing warmth over power. The lyrics were almost deceptively simple, a heartfelt tribute to someone who made life feel complete. There were no dramatic vocal runs or complicated arrangements. Some executives questioned whether listeners expecting another high-energy Gap Band anthem would embrace such a mellow record. Even the band viewed it as a pleasant album cut rather than a career-defining hit. Radio audiences quickly proved otherwise. Once urban stations began spinning the record, requests poured in. Outstanding climbed into the top 10 of Billboard's R&B chart, but its true success couldn't be measured by chart positions alone. DJs kept playing it long after newer hits arrived. It became a staple at family reunions, weddings, skating rinks, late-night radio shows, and neighborhood cookouts. Unlike many songs that dominated one summer before disappearing, Outstanding developed a life of its own, growing bigger with every passing year. Then hip-hop discovered it. Producers were captivated by its silky bass line and effortless groove. Artists including the Notorious B.I.G., Ashanti, Tyler, The Creator, Heavy D, Shaquille O'Neal, and dozens more sampled or interpolated the record, introducing it to entirely new generations of listeners. Today, many music historians consider Outstanding one of the most sampled R&B songs ever recorded. Official music videos, Soul Train appearances, concert performances, and tribute shows remain widely available online, making it easy to experience the song's enduring magic. What began as a quiet, understated recording that almost blended into the album became the defining signature of the Gap Band's remarkable career, a timeless reminder that sometimes the softest voice leaves the strongest echo. Number 6, Double Dutch Bus, Frankie Smith, 1981. When Frankie Smith walked into the studio in 1981, he wasn't trying to write a serious soul masterpiece. He wanted to capture something that millions of kids growing up in American cities experienced every afternoon: the excitement surrounding the neighborhood double Dutch jump rope game. The chants, the laughter, the friendly competition, and the unmistakable energy of the streets inspired him to create a song that felt playful from beginning to end. Even Smith admitted later that he wanted listeners to smile first and dance second. It was never designed to impress critics. It was designed to entertain. The recording quickly became one of the most unusual sessions of the year. Smith and producer Bill Bloom experimented with vocal effects that made it sound as if the singer were talking through a toy microphone. They even invented a playful language by replacing certain syllables with is, turning ordinary phrases into something listeners had never heard before. Expressions like "dizubbel dizutch business" sounded completely ridiculous at first. Some people inside the studio laughed, while others wondered if radio audiences would simply switch stations. The lyrics celebrated buses, neighborhoods, and everyday life with a sense of humor rarely heard in mainstream R&B. Radio programmers were initially unsure what to make of it. The record didn't sound like the polished ballads dominating the charts, nor did it resemble the hard-driving funk hits of the era. Yet once DJs played it at block parties and roller skating rinks, audiences instantly connected with its infectious groove. The playful chants became impossible not to repeat, and before long, Double Dutch Bus climbed into the top 10 of Billboard's R&B chart, while crossing over to the Billboard Hot 100. More importantly, it became a cultural phenomenon, especially in urban communities where double Dutch competitions were a way of life. The song's influence stretched far beyond the early 1980s. Hip-hop producers embraced its funky rhythm and unforgettable vocal style, while countless artists borrowed its playful energy in later recordings. Its distinctive groove has been sampled and referenced by musicians ranging from Missy Elliott to Ludacris, introducing the record to new generations. Official performances, television appearances, and archival clips remain easy to find online, keeping Frankie Smith's biggest hit alive decades after its release. What began as a lighthearted tribute to a neighborhood pastime became one of funk's most recognizable party records, proving that sometimes the songs built around pure joy become the ones that stand the test of time.
You really turn it on. Bills Harbor, Bills Harry, Bills.
Number 5. The Bird. The Time. 1983. By 1983, The Time had already earned a reputation as one of the most exciting live bands in America. Led by the charismatic Morris Day, with Prince secretly writing and producing much of their material, the group thrived on humor, swagger, and outrageous stage performances. Unlike many R&B acts chasing heartfelt ballads, The Time built their identity around making audiences laugh while keeping them on the dance floor. It was during rehearsals and live shows that a goofy dance known simply as The Bird started getting huge reactions from crowds. At first, nobody imagined it would become the centerpiece of one of the band's biggest hits. The song itself wasn't born from a carefully crafted songwriting session. It grew naturally out of the band's playful chemistry. Prince encouraged Morris Day to exaggerate his personality even further, turning every performance into a theatrical event filled with jokes, dancing, and audience interaction. The lyrics were intentionally simple because the dance, not the words, was supposed to steal the spotlight. Some executives questioned whether a record built around a novelty dance could have any lasting appeal. To them, it felt like a fun concert moment that would never translate to radio. Then the public got involved. As soon as The Bird reached clubs and radio stations, listeners began copying the dance exactly as Morris Day performed it. Concert audiences exploded with energy every time the opening drum beat hit. The single climbed into the top 10 on Billboard's R&B chart, becoming one of the Time's signature recordings. But its biggest boost came a year later, when the band performed it in Prince's blockbuster film, Purple Rain. That unforgettable performance introduced millions of moviegoers to Morris Day's larger-than-life charisma and transformed The Bird from a regional funk favorite into an international party anthem. More than 40 years later, the song remains one of the defining records of the Minneapolis sound. Clips from Purple Rain, live concerts, television performances, and official music videos continue attracting viewers online, while Morris Day still closes many of his concerts with the song because audiences expect it. Looking back, it's remarkable that a dance everyone initially treated as a backstage joke became one of the most recognizable moments in 1980s funk. Sometimes all it takes is one playful idea, one unforgettable performance, and the confidence to embrace the ridiculous. That's exactly what The Time did, and music history has been dancing to The Bird ever since. Number 4. Do the Funky Chicken. Rufus Thomas, 1970. Long before dance challenges spread across social media, Rufus Thomas had already mastered the art of getting entire crowds to copy his every move. By 1970, the Stax Records veteran was already famous for turning playful dances into hit records. But when he introduced Do the Funky Chicken, almost everyone around him thought it was simply another one of Rufus's stage jokes. After all, he was known as one of soul music's greatest entertainers, a man who could make audiences laugh just as easily as he could make them dance.
Come on, children, look at me.
The idea didn't begin inside a recording studio. It started during live performances, where Rufus would suddenly flap his arms, bend his knees, and imitate the awkward movements of a chicken. The audience loved it. Night after night, people laughed, copied the dance, and begged him to do it again. Seeing those reactions, producer Al Bell and the Stax team encouraged Rufus to capture that same energy on record. There was no complicated message hidden in the lyrics. The song was intentionally silly, built around a funky groove, catchy commands, and Rufus's larger-than-life personality.
I'm gonna show you, break down his heart.
Even then, not everyone believed it belonged on the radio. Some critics dismissed it as a novelty record that would disappear within weeks. Others questioned whether listeners would buy a song centered around pretending to be a chicken. But Stax understood something many people overlooked. Rufus Thomas wasn't selling lyrics, he was selling joy. As soon as DJs played the record at parties and clubs, people jumped onto the dance floor, laughing while trying to imitate the famous Funky Chicken. The single became one of Rufus Thomas's biggest solo successes, reaching the top 5 on Billboard's R&B chart,
Down, y'all. Bring on down. Everybody.
while crossing over onto the Billboard Hot 100. Its influence stretched far beyond its chart run. James Brown, Parliament Funkadelic, and countless funk performers embraced the idea that dance records could be theatrical as well as musical. Decades later, hip-hop artists would continue referencing Rufus Thomas's playful approach to performance, proving that entertainment could be just as important as technical perfection. Official Stax performances, television appearances, and vintage concert footage remain widely available online, allowing new generations to witness the infectious energy that made Do the Funky Chicken unforgettable. What started as a backstage joke became one of the defining dance records of classic soul, reminding everyone that music doesn't always have to be serious to become legendary.
Yeah.
Number 3, Super Freak, Rick James, 1981.
All-time favorites. When I make my move to
By the summer of 1981, Rick James had already established himself as one of the most fearless innovators in funk. Albums like Come Get It and Garden of Love had made him a superstar in black music. But he still wanted one more record to complete his latest project, Street Songs. The problem was, the album was essentially finished. According to Rick James himself, he wasn't searching for another masterpiece. He simply wanted something fun, something audiences could dance to without thinking too hard. In later interviews, James admitted he intentionally set out to write what he described as a silly song with a slightly new wave feel, believing it would simply lighten the mood of the album.
she's a very special girl.
The recording came together remarkably fast. Rick built the groove around a driving synthesizer line, infectious guitar riffs, and playful lyrics about an unforgettable woman who lived life entirely on her own terms. Even inside the studio, no one treated the song like the future centerpiece of the album. Some of Rick's friends warned him the lyrics were too suggestive for radio. Others believed the track sounded too playful compared to the deeper funk material that had built his reputation. James eventually softened a few lyrics after radio DJ Alonzo Miller suggested they might attract unwanted censorship, but he still considered the record little more than an entertaining diversion.
Everybody sing. Super freak, super freak.
Then, the public proved everyone wrong. Super Freak exploded across America, becoming Rick James's biggest crossover success. It reached number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 3 on the Hot Soul Singles chart, and number 1 on Billboard's Dance Club chart. The music video became one of the defining visuals of early 1980s funk, and audiences couldn't get enough of its infectious groove. Ironically, the song Rick James had treated almost like a joke became the record that introduced millions of pop listeners to his music.
She's super freaking, yow.
Its legacy grew even larger nearly a decade later. In 1990, MC Hammer sampled the unmistakable bass line for You Can't Touch This. Because the sample formed the foundation of the new song, Rick James received songwriting credit and, when You Can't Touch This won the Grammy Award for Best R&B Song, James earned his only Grammy Award as a songwriter. Today, Super Freak has been sampled, licensed, and featured in countless films, television shows, commercials, and sporting events. Official music videos, live performances, and television appearances remain widely available online, ensuring that every new generation discovers the song that Rick James never expected to become the defining hit of his career. Sometimes the records artists create just for fun end up becoming the ones that live forever.
Everybody sing.
Number 2, Jungle Boogie, Kool and the Gang, 1973. Long before Jungle Boogie became one of the most recognizable funk songs ever recorded, it was little more than a studio experiment. Kool and the Gang had spent years earning respect as exceptional musicians, but they were still searching for a sound that could push them beyond the R&B audience into mainstream success. Their producer encouraged them to capitalize on the growing popularity of African-inspired funk grooves after the success of Manu Dibango's Soul Makossa. Instead of overthinking the assignment, the band decided to let the rhythm lead the way. They built an irresistible groove, added explosive horn lines, and kept the lyrics to an absolute minimum. No one believed they were creating one of the defining funk records of the decade. Then came one of the most unlikely moments in recording history. The unforgettable voice shouting, "Get down, get down," didn't belong to a member of Kool and the Gang at all. It belonged to Don Boyce, the band's road manager. Boyce wasn't hired as a singer, and he certainly wasn't expected to become the voice people would remember 50 years later. During the recording session, the band felt the track needed something raw and energetic to match the groove. Rather than bringing in another vocalist, they simply invited Boyce to step up to the microphone. His rough, spontaneous delivery was exactly what the record needed. What began as a last-minute decision instantly became the song's signature. Even after the recording was finished, nobody inside the studio viewed it as a masterpiece. The lyrics consisted of little more than repeated phrases, chants, and pure rhythm. In fact, Kool and the Gang recorded Jungle Boogie, Hollywood Swinging, and Funky Stuff during the same remarkable recording period, treating each track almost like an extended jam session. But once Jungle Boogie reached radio stations and dance clubs, the response was immediate. The record climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, reached number 2 on the Billboard R&B chart, and sold more than 1 million copies, becoming one of the band's earliest crossover successes. Its influence only grew with time. The groove became a favorite among hip-hop producers, with artists like Beastie Boys, Madonna, NWA, and many others sampling or referencing the record over the decades. It also found new audiences through films like Pulp Fiction, sports broadcasts, television shows, and countless commercials. Official music videos, Soul Train performances, and live concert footage remain widely available online, making it one of the easiest classics to illustrate in a documentary. Looking back, it's almost unbelievable that one of funk's greatest anthems depended on a road manager who wasn't even supposed to sing. But that's exactly what makes Jungle Boogie unforgettable. Sometimes history isn't made by the biggest star in the room. It belongs to the person who simply answers when someone says, "Step up to the mic." Number 1, Car Wash, Royce, 1976. Sometimes the greatest songs in music history don't come from inspiration. They come from necessity. That was exactly the case for Car Wash. In 1976, legendary producer and songwriter Norman Whitfield had already built one of the most impressive resumes in soul music. He had written and produced classics for The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, and Gladys Knight and the Pips. But when film director Michael Schultz asked him to create the soundtrack for a comedy called Car Wash, Whitfield wasn't excited. According to multiple interviews, he accepted the project largely because he wanted to support his newly formed Whitfield Records. The problem was simple. He had absolutely no idea how to write a hit song about washing cars. For weeks, Whitfield struggled with writer's block. Every idea sounded forced. Every lyric felt artificial. Then, during a recording session at the studio, the musicians took a break to play basketball outside. Whitfield stayed behind, eating fried chicken while watching them through the window. Suddenly, the rhythm of the players running across the court reminded him of the steady movement inside a busy car wash. Without wasting a second, he grabbed the greasy paper bag that had held his lunch and began scribbling lyrics directly onto it. Those handwritten notes became the foundation of one of the greatest funk songs ever recorded. What started as a desperate attempt to finish an assignment became pure inspiration. Even after the song was completed, nobody expected what happened next. Royce, a relatively new band assembled by Whitfield, recorded the track with infectious energy, driven by one of the most recognizable bass lines and grooves of the decade. The sound effects, layered percussion, and joyful chorus perfectly recreated the atmosphere of a bustling neighborhood car wash. Radio stations immediately embraced it, and audiences couldn't resist singing along. Car Wash raced to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, #1 on the Billboard R&B chart, and became one of the best-selling singles of 1976. The Car Wash soundtrack earned a Grammy Award for Best Score Soundtrack for Visual Media, while the title song became Royce's signature hit and launched the group's career around the world. Nearly 50 years later, Car Wash remains one of the defining records of classic R&B and funk. It has appeared in countless films, television shows, commercials, and video games. The song even found a new generation of fans when Christina Aguilera and Missy Elliott recorded a successful cover for the 2004 animated film Shark Tale. Official music videos, live performances, Soul Train appearances, and archival footage are widely available online, making it an ideal centerpiece for any documentary. Looking back, it's almost impossible to believe that one of the most joyful songs ever recorded began with a frustrated songwriter, a piece of fried chicken, and a greasy paper bag. But that's exactly why Car Wash deserves the #1 spot on this countdown. It proves that inspiration doesn't always arrive in a grand moment. Sometimes it shows up during lunch, changes music history, and leaves the world dancing for generations.